Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Anthony, and he'll give you some context of what we're doing today.
Hey y'all, it's so great to be on this call once again. We have we've taken a pause from doing our sort of community conversations for a bit, but we're starting back up. They always were so nourishing, healing in so many different ways, and so I'm happy that we're able to convene again in a time that we really need healing and consciousness raising the most. So open with a quote from Warren Buffett, which reads, "There's class warfare, all right, but it's my class, the rich class, that's making war, and we're winning." End quote. Today, the class war is in plain sight. Two billionaires, including the unelected richest man in the world, are the most visible representatives of the ruling class in their violent fascist assault. They are taking a wrecking ball to government institutions and agencies, the economy, social institutions, the ecology, and Earth, and human life. Because the robotic and AI digital revolution is increasingly replacing all forms of human labor, physical, mental, and care labor, we are becoming increasingly superfluous to the capitalist class. When they can no longer exploit us, they destroy the public institutions that support us. We are in danger. Workers are paying the price for so-called government waste, fraud, and corruption. Government workers, industry workers, construction workers, service worker, gig workers, knowledge workers, cultural workers, academic workers, healthcare workers, farm workers, the unemployed, all of us. And this is just the beginning. Our challenge as working class revolutionaries is preparing for this moment while also preparing for the long haul, for the path to working class power and the construction of a cooperative society in harmony with the earth, preparing ourselves and each other collectively, emotionally, intellectually, organizationally, economically, and politically. So we are going to we're going to sort of introduce the questions that we'll be discussing uh, first, and then we'll do a deeper dive into each three.
Yes, thank you. So as Anthony mentioned, we're going to read each question. We have three in total. And then uh, we'll go into each question, beginning with question one. So Diana, go ahead and give an introduction of your question.
Okay, hello, everybody. Yeah, this is a very important question. I'm going to say the question first and then explain why it's important to me and explain to you sort of the context around it and why it feels so important. The question itself is, how are our personal fears, anxieties, and sense of security affected by and connected to of course, I'm reading this and okay, how are our personal fears, anxieties, and sense of security affected by and connected to our unity and collective political struggle? And I feel like this is a really important question for us now, because this is something I give a lot of thought to, which is, why is it that so many members of the working class can cling to the status quo so hard and work against themselves instead of coming together to unite? And I want to start by answering Warren Buffett. Yes, I agree. There is a class war going on, and the enemy we're facing is large and powerful and skilled, and the task is daunting. When faced with the everything all at once strategy being employed by the fascist leadership of the United States, where judicial orders are treated as unwelcome input, where the president says he's unclear if he's
Llámenos al 707-964.
is we okay? Okay, where the president says he is unclear if he's required or expected to uphold the Constitution, And the rule of law does not apply to the executive branch as it oils up the machinery to send people who disagree with it to permanent detention camps in foreign countries. That means that the ability to unite as a class is 100% based on our own individual fears, anxiety, and where we believe we can find our sense of security, at least in my opinion. Revolution is a big ask when the known may suck, but at least we understand how to make that work and who to be wary of. The current situation needs to feel almost untenable in order to achieve and take a chance on true security that comes from class unity and a clear sense of the collective political struggle. But there's a reason that the adage of divide and conquer, and that it's so strong and actively true. If each individual of the working class is in survival mode and only has the capacity to feel their own pain as they struggle to feed, clothe, and house themselves and their loved ones, if each individual watches workplace protections that have been fought for through years of labor strikes be rolled back, if they see the entity that normally is and nominally was supposed to protect their individual finances dismantled, they're observing the gleeful spectacle of seeing the organizations that maintain what little social safety net that we have being destroyed, if they're beginning to accept that their bodily autonomy and protection from deadly diseases are supposed to be usurped, and they're physically weakened in their health and their living conditions by being collectively endangered and disregarded by the ruling class, it's easy to fall into a reactionary, every individual for themselves frenzy. The working people basically have no experience with a collective that operates in their favor anymore. Unions have been pushed back for a long time, and have been villainized for a long time for a lot of the younger people. And in order to enter class struggle and social movements in general, individuals need to come to the conclusion that individual effort isn't going to protect them anymore, and that uniting with friends, family, and neighbors with a mindset that only we can save us is where class unity lies. Everyone around you, even the people you don't care about very much or care for very much, they're fighting the same battles and scared of the same things, and people need to really come to a visceral realization about that. However, the purposefully designed cruelty that has grown under late-stage capitalism, the doctrines of distrust between people, of fear and isolation, make it easy for individuals, even in movement together, to be focusing on each other's purity and actively looking for imperfections and disagreements. And to focus on those is easier for our survival mode brains than to face the true threats to the class as a whole and each of its members. So much trauma has been laid on workers in late-stage capitalism that our class as a whole isn't thinking clearly. As revolutionaries, we need to turn our eyes toward the true issues and actions of the ruling class that threaten our very existence and unite to combat them, even with individuals we don't really like that much, individuals who in more peaceful moments we might and will have the luxury to take to task in order to address their individual imperfections or offenses. But at this moment, working class individuals haven't had the experience of a collective that they can fully trust. And so they're always looking for where the harm is going to come from. Fears and insecurity and anxieties created by generations of trauma under this capitalist system leave the true sense of security that comes from unity and recognition of workers' collective political struggle unattainable. And so for me, that's what I ponder, is how are we going to get from this fear of each other that has just been inbred into us and inculcated into us to generations, to the point that we are able to get the real security that we need. That's it.
Thank you. Very good.
Bravo.
So we're going to go to the next question. So again, we're going to read all three, give a little context, and then we're going to start our discussion. Anthony, you're up.
Yeah, so the next question that we're going to be grappling with is what does it mean that we are living in a class society with a multiracial, multinational, and multigender working class? Um, the inspo behind this question is just simply around looking at how diverse working class folks are, and the necessity of all of us collectively realizing that we're in this together, and we need to do something about what's happening to all of us collectively. I always look at sort of the dynamic and relationship between myself, Walda, who's like my auntie, and Jerome, who's big uncle. And I think about how they came into my lives in a time where I was in grad school, figuring out what life was all about. And I was up at Howard in Washington, D.C. And yeah, Walda was always on lead calls. I didn't know what she was. It was some crazy white woman that was my theory professor. And I'm like, what is she doing always passing around rally stuff and in class? And she was always consciousness raising, and it wasn't just when she was engaging with league sort of calls or in the league community, but what she did in life was all about consciousness raising. And then being in deep relationship with Jerome and having him come and being able as a young person to sit at the feet of elders, and really learn and absorb so much from them was truly transformative for me. And I got my PhD at 28 years old, right? And so, what was the most significant was that I got an opportunity to be around folks that were deeply engaged in sort of the political, social, economic struggle for a revolution. Folks that had dedicated their lives to this. And so when we talk about multi-generational, this is multi-generational. When we talk about multi-gender, it's multi-gender. When we talk about multinational, there are folks from all over that we're in deep community with. Thanks, Don, so much from coming all the way from Canada. So this is so important, and I hope that through our discussion, we really emphasize the need for a working class movement that is, again, multiracial, multinational, multigender, and all other forms of working class folks, because we are heterogeneous, but we have one homogenous relationship to exploitation because we are exploited by working capitalism.
Mhm.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Jerome, so go with question 3.
All right. Well, first of all, welcome everybody. Question 3 is, are we in a class war?
Mhm.
And what does this mean concretely? Are we in a class war? And what does it mean concretely? And I think this question is really critical because if we don't describe where we are and what the battle is, then it'd be pretty difficult to solve it. And I'm going to just give you 3 examples of how this is a class war. One, of course, is what's happening in Palestine
Mm,
and the destruction of Gaza. I mean, what the United States is trying to say to us is we don't care about humanity if that humanity is not on our side.
mhm,
And we don't think you should care. And if you care, we're going to prosecute you for caring. You know, and we know who the Palestinian people are that's being destroyed. They're working class folk. They're folks that have to work to live, And so that's just one example. The second example is one of these executive orders that Trump signed around the police, the US police, telling them that they can do just about anything they want and they should not be held up to any responsibility, no matter, long as it was in the, it, long, long as they say I did it because I was in my line of duty. If they say that, then they should not be held accountable for anything that they do. And you know who they're doing it to, and that's working class folks. And the third, of course, is the way this immigration thing is going. You know, you can't tell me that sending people to these prisons, no matter what country they're in, and demonstrating how vile and criminal these prisons are, is just saying to the American people, not just the immigrant community, but saying to the American people, I will send your ass there next. And to try to scare us into at least not rebelling, not resisting, try to scare us into going back in our own safe spot. So it's important that we understand that this is a war, and it is a killing war. You know, they're killing us. And when you look at all the stuff that they're cutting and getting rid of, all that, when you get down to the bottom of it, were some aspects of how working class people could get a edge up, not a whole foot, but just an edge. And they eliminating that from the education department, you know, to all kinds of aid for food stamps and all that. You know, so we're in a war, and we all know that when you're in a war, there's only one way to win it, and that is to be able to go on the offensive. One of the things that is connected to this question is how do we use these defensive battles that we're waging right now, because we have to try to protect all that we can. How do we use those battles to set us up for going on the offensive? What kind of tactics are the best tactics to use in this moment in order to build on those tactics to go on the offensive in this war? And I think if we can have a little discussion about all three of these questions and all the concepts surrounding them, we'll have a good hour and a half. Thank you for being with us.
We're going to have a great hour and a half. Okay.
I
So,
stand corrected.
so we're going to get started. So I think it'll probably just be easier. I'll go ahead and just restate the question. And we will get started on our discussion. So question 1, how are our personal fears, anxieties, and sense of security affected by and connected to our unity and collective political struggle? Stack is open. Okay, be sure you raise your hand and then you'll come up. All right. Steve.
Hello, everybody. I'm sorry that I'm the first one, but the dead mic tone is not good on the radio. So uh, I just want to report that Anthony and others mentioned AI, and AI is consciously designed precisely to generate certain emotions and not others. This is why we see teenage girls as the victims of this stuff. You're fat, you're fat, you're fat, you're fat, you're stupid, and you're ugly, and you're fat, that kind of stuff. And so hatred and anger spread more rapidly on social media. This is being used against us. And therefore, the importance of the question of really becoming clear on this is super important, because that is the way forward. Once people are clear and we're all in the same accord, it won't take very long, I don't think. I'll stop.
Thank you. Deborah.
Yeah, sorry, it took me a second. Deborah from San Jose, California. One thing in psychology is that we need to remember is that when we talk about emotions like fear and anger and hate, the feelings, no matter who you are or what the situation, the feeling is the same. So I think where our differences are is in what solutions we want. And so if we can connect with people who think very differently from us, about what the solutions are or what the reason for the problems are, and connect with people on the level of not necessarily the high emotions that are going around, but to have the compassion for others, that they are feeling uneasy, they are feeling fear, but they have they're coming at it from a different place. But if we could all connect in community from that place of unease and distress and fear and anger and hate, because it's on both sides or all sides, there's so many sides. If we can connect about, what those feelings are that are driving us, then we can definitely identify with one another from a better perspective, or a perspective that comes from a same place, and then try to move forward in community in that way. Anyway, that's all.
Yes, very good. Thank you. Okay, I see. Who do I see? KK. You're on mute, KK.
You're still on mute.
Something's not working.
I think her audio might not.
She's put in chat, let me fix my mic.
Okay. Okay. I'll come back to you.
She dropped her mic.
Adam.
Sure, thank you. I raised my hand maybe before I had fully thought out my comment, but just really um like activated in a good way by the questions and the conversation so far. You know, I, like probably so many of you, have had really heartbreaking, painful experiences in movement work, in movement collectives, in movement work and collectives that intersected with league collectives. Where our collective failure to like hold ourselves and each other in tensions and conflicts while we moved through our fears and anxieties and built up a personal sense of security within our collectives, where our collective failure to do that resulted in important revolutionary projects and efforts getting set back or destroyed. And I've seen this happen again and again and again, and probably anyone who's tried organizing, at any level, especially I think as it gets into the higher levels of like with national organizing and beyond, like has probably experienced this. And just some general things to say about it is like obviously we've been historically divided in every way that we have been, in all the like ways that the class relations play themselves out along race and gender and culture and religion, etc. Um, and we see the ruling class using these weapons against us to keep us in those historically divided and increasingly like reactionary positions, and it really is killing the left because we become like cannibalistic um and just like destroy each other for them. I just started this book by Adrienne Marie Brown, We Will Not Cancel Us. That's giving me some good abolitionist frameworks for looking at this. And the question I have to offer the group is basically how do we create and develop the skills for dealing with fears and anxieties that come up as we're in movement work together at smaller scales that we can then build up to larger scales with the goal ultimately of creating a society beyond the punitive carceral paradigm in which, you know, violence and prisons and policing are our answer to how we keep ourselves and each other safe, because they've always been tools of the ruling class, and we have to like deeply wrestle with that and build tools at the small scale that can be scaled up.
Okay, thank you. That's an important question, and we're going to come back to that question. I just want to remind everybody, we're going to hold comments and questions and responses to 2 minutes so we can get through everybody. Next on stack is Marilyn.
Hi, I'm going to leave my video off just because I have trouble with you'll have trouble hearing me if you're seeing me. And my video looks better than I do right today. So, I mean, my picture does. But I just wanted to say that I think you can tell by the gray in my hair that I've gotten to the place where a lot of things in life are more of a struggle than they were when I was young. And one of the two words that guide me are patience and persistence. And I think in that context, I wanted to say, remember that a lot of these negative feelings, this psychology that Deborah was talking about, the Anthony and Steve and Jerome's comments, we are living in a culture that the conservative, right-wing, fascist, anti-working section of the society that grew on the basis of basically the wealth that we stole from the rest of the world, right? Over the last 30 and 40 and 100 years, is the view from 30,000 feet is that this is a huge cultural struggle. So as we engage in it, all the little ways that we put forward what it means to support each other. And to tell you the truth, the closer you get to the grassroots of people, like just in a community or just the parents in a school or the parents in a school district, you find more and more you can escape that cultural tsunami of division and competition and lack of trust. And that's where we build that trust. And to tell you the truth, in the many years I've spent with this, the thing that has kept me going through the darkest days is the trust I have in the best people I've known in my life who have always fought for the good of the whole.
Okay, thank you. I see Peter and Yolanda. I know you wanted to get on stack. You'll come after Peter. Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. First, I want to say that everybody who's spoken so far, including myself, is someone I know. But there are a lot of people I've never met on this call, and I really want to encourage you to bring forward your ideas and your questions. This is your conversation. This about fear. I taught at a community college in Oakland for 12 and a half years. And for 8.5 of those, I was a part-time teacher with absolutely no security, no tenure, no chance of tenure. But bad things were happening to us. With our budgets were being cut, and teachers and students were being mistreated, and classes were being cut. All kinds of problems. Maintenance was not being done. Pieces were falling off of buildings. And I began raising my voice, and people said, Peter, you're a part-time teacher. Don't say that in a board of trustees meeting. They can fire you. And I found my response had to be, I'm more afraid of what happens if I don't speak up than what will happen if I do. And it was a turning point for me in my life because a lot of fears dropped away, and the urgency of the real issues we face became the primary thing for me. And I'll stop with that.
Okay, thank you. Yolanda. Yolanda, if you're speaking, you may be on mute.
Okay. Okay, this is my response. I don't know if you can see it, but the book Black Radical: The Education of an American Revolutionary, it gives me courage. This is the second time I read the book. I also read Black Fire: The Making of an American Revolutionary twice by Nelson Perry. He signed both books for me. It gives me courage because he talks about fighting. He talks about his experience as a veteran in World War II. He talks about growing up in different states he lived in the United States, and he always kept on. He talks about, and it gives me courage. And I would just like to say I recommend people reading the books. I think Lou Rosenbaum, he sent me a list of books that are available. Nelson Perry's books are available, and they're very much. He lived through the period of the McCarthy era, where the Communist Party did not allow African Americans who were organizing for unity, for conscious raising for African Americans in the United States. They prefer to not get taken up by the House Investigating Committee, which had imprisoned some of the members. And but it just gives me like courage to keep on fighting, and to keep on reading and keep on talking. I think that I went to the May Day March, and tell me when my 30 seconds before my minute is up. I went to the May Day March, and the women talked about issues of the domestic workers, the ones that do the jobs, handyman jobs, and construction jobs. They stand out here on the street, and people give them works. And they were it wasn't as militant as usual. So I know there's fear. I'm a naturalized citizen. I have fear, but I keep thinking of Nelson Perry. I keep remembering what I read, and that gives me a lot of strength and hope and support.
Okay, thank you, Yolanda. Okay, I just want to remind some people, veterans that are on this call, there was an important question that was posed about how do we, and I'll paraphrase a little bit, Adam, on your question is, how do we create the ability and tools to deal with the division among us, which stands in the way of building class unity, which is important. Rosemary.
Yeah, I find that the strength for all this, after being an activist for many years, it's getting beyond the quote left. It's so many of the demonstrations in LA have been completely young people, every ethnicity, race, sexual orientation together, just very different from like the 1960s anti-war demos. But this national movement that came out of May Day Strong, we have, which is seen as the beginning, and that we had 2,400 people on our last meeting. And these different organizations are out there that anyone can plug into. Like one is the Workers Over Billionaires, which is the goal of talking to 10 million workers in the South and the Southwest by Labor Day, and all these trainings and how you can do it. Even if it's just messaging and you can't go out in person, and the events around Trump's parade day, there's no Kings movement and no clowns, which is like already in 50 states, but just this tremendous response, and not all these pitfall of, identity politics and this and that. It's like we're all in this together. How do we move forward? And it's so much more grassroots, and it's so wide. And it's just heartening just to hear from all the different parts of the United States. I mean, to have thousands of people in the South out for May Day, when has that ever happened before? And people see it as a beginning, and they see it as working together. And it's the most heartening thing I've seen in years, and it's so broad. So I would encourage people to check that out. Just go to maydaystrong.org. It's a whole different way of organizing. And it's not the left having their sectarian fights. It's like young people saying,
this is screwed up. It's affecting whatever sector, but we're in it together. And it's always, we're in it together. How do we build a different future for us? It is not, how do we repair a broken system? It's how do we prepare the future for all of us? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ethel. You looking for that mute button, Ethel?
I am. Sorry for the delay. I really want to thank the conveners of the event and the presenters. Powerful framing. And I'd like to maybe just my comments in unity with those would be, I come from Oaktown. This is Oakland, California. And we have been in the midst of a pretty fierce set of battles where the MAGA regime has presented as African American, Latino, and Asian to promote that their plan to promote a corporate dictatorship is the way that we should go if you want to have an end to poverty, crime, an end to the numerous things that rack our city and our country, but particularly really deeply resonating in how, quote, unsafe our city has become. And I think that that's why I really was happy that the collective chose to start with, these emotion and fears. And I think that it was said, but I don't think it hurts to restate. Yeah, there is a class war being made on us. It's not just in our heads. And a part of that is our perception of, well, why are we in this situation and who is the perpetrator? And I think that these things, when this idea is either we accept the billionaires' plan of fatalism and attacks of one another as the only solutions, or are we, in the way that Rosemary is suggesting, contemplate that these various upsurges, and I think that they are that, they're a rejection of the status quo and upsurges represent the opportunity for new ideas, represent the opportunity for our class to contemplate, and for revolutionaries such as ourselves to contemplate the idea of accessing our power. What is that power? Class unity towards the ownership of these resources on a public basis, a collective basis, and we can rid our country and this earth of the scourge of homelessness, poverty, etc. All of us know that. But what is different is that we're in the midst of a social revolution that is actually contemplating which way forward. And so I think that that's one of the things that makes this period, and as the speakers have laid out, particularly significant. Ownership and use of AI for the healing of our planet and our people. But we cannot do that and think that we're going to preserve the quote unquote the profit or commodification method. Who needs it? We're not gazillionaires. The only people that this current regime carries that they articulate openly is if you have, I don't know how many millions of dollars in your bank account. So the idea that we can win, it's hard sometimes for revolutionaries because we oftentimes have been in so many battles, and most of us on this, many of us, I shouldn't say most because I can't see everyone, have been in numbers of battles and we have lost those. But we lose sight, and I know you probably need me to wrap up. We lose sight of the idea that that class struggle is going forward, and if we can advance it in terms of both organizing towards class unity and a strategic plan to transform our country, we're in a very good position. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I am going to read the second question. If your comments are towards the first one, that's fine. What does it mean that we are living in a class society with a multiracial, multinational, and multigender working class? And I go to Anthony next.
Oh, that was a great segue because that was my question. Uh, Yeah, no, I wanted to jump in. I realized that these questions are not mutually exclusive. In so many different ways, they have this deep interrelationship with one another. Adam said some powerful things, and what I started to reflect on was how do we hold together, right, as we are grappling with our own anxieties and fears. Just humanizing this whole space. And Walda always has to remind me, and in very subtle but very powerful ways, that when you are going through sort of struggle, I have the tendency personally to isolate myself and go into a cocoon and push the entire world out. Um, just for some sense of a reprieve and try to regain some sense of sanity or rest in so many different ways. But I'm always reminded how important community is and how important the healing of community is in times where you feel like you have to isolate, right? Rest is certainly important, but I have to be intentional about realizing that community in this time more than ever has to be a part of my reset and recharge. And what type of community would I want to be actively engaged with that is a part of that healing becomes the question. When Adam jumped on, I was thinking about how we have to grapple with this internal struggle, this internal revolution before we can engage in anything externally, right? When we are learning about the ways in which racism pervades our everyday life and culture as Black folks, right? How white supremacy is ubiquitous, and we're constantly having to navigate the world, seeing ourselves from the lens of ourselves, but the lens of whiteness, right? It's a constant struggle, it's a constant battle. And when we think about the ways in which Black communities have been uh, uh, broken down, right? Thinking about anti-Blackness, we internalize anti-Blackness so much. How can I not only be conscious of the ways in which white supremacy and capitalism has been used to divide us, to dehumanize us, to strip us away from our humanity? When I think about those things and I think about the things that people in my own community or even myself I internalize, there is a self-awakening that happens. Right now, practices that I used to have, things that I used to say, things that I used to watch, things that I used to eat. My doctor told me that my glucose was 122. That is too high. And my A1C was a 6.4. How? I'm trying to figure out all of the things that I've done, all the things that I've eaten, all of the things that I need to do differently to make sure I have better healthcare outcomes. The same things happens, I would say, with movement building and consciousness raising. It has to start internally, right? And there's a heartbreak for you to tell me that I can't have that cookie and that ice cream that I really want, right? Because it is not healing to me. So when I think about the things that we watch, when I think about the things that we consume, not just physically, but like watch, listen to, etc., right? Those things have to be healing as well. And this is internal battle. I'm fighting with my daggone self, right? But it's a necessary struggle towards revolutionary outcomes that are humanizing, that are moving towards life and prayerfully life more abundantly. And so I think about the same thing when I'm actively engaging in community with comrades. There's going to be struggle with comrades.
Mhm.
There's going to be pushback with comrades. But I know that through this struggle with comrades, right, through navigating anxiety, through navigating frustrations, through navigating even that heartbreak, I have to keep hope alive, right? That through it all, I'm gonna have a stronger community. I'm gonna have a stronger sense of self, and through that, we all are gonna be strengthened for the time to as we continue to engage in this fight on a larger scale. So anyway, I was thinking that, and all of that is multicultural, multigender, multiracial, etc. Okay, pass.
Okay.
Sorry.
I gave Anthony just a little more time because he is a presenter, just saying, I have Don and then Cynthia, you'll be next.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My comment was about the first question about how personal fears and anxieties affect my unity with any struggle. And the people on this call, I really admire your strength and your courage, and those are some traits that I hope to gain. Um, But my comment is pretty much echoes exactly what Anthony said. That when I'm consumed by fear and anxiety, I tend to self-sabotage. I turtle up and I withdraw and I become more introverted and I pull away from my friends and loved ones, let alone any community. And it's probably the exact opposite of what you should do. But I I guess those are some obstacles to me becoming more active and more connected is my tendency to withdraw. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Miss Cynthia.
Hello. I'm very, very grateful that you organized this and for the breadth and depth of the comments that are being made. They move me deeply. I resonate strongly with Adam, with Anthony, and what Don just said. And it's interesting, I can make a segue in terms of withdrawing because I want you to look at the photo that's behind me. That's my home. That's where I lived until January 8th, when the fires took the whole trailer park that I lived in. I'll put another photo up that shows the stairs to what used to be my home. Anyway, so I am deeply moved, very deeply moved, and I'm extremely grateful that the content of this discussion acknowledges that we are motivated by our emotions, not just by our rational thinking. It's funny, if I'll take a moment and go back to being an 8-year-old when, for some odd reason, I decided that it was necessary to change the whole world. And so I dedicated myself to that, first wanting to be the head of the, what was it? Anyway, whatever, one of those major organizations, national organizations. And maybe the head of the UN. I don't know, something like that. Anyway, so I learned over time that it was necessary to build a working class movement. I was a founding member of the Communist Labor Party and of LERNA. So it's been a dedication. What I want to speak to in terms of this emotional content is morality, and that what we're really guided by underneath the emotions and our rational thinking is the moral core that we care for humanity, that I wake up in the morning and cry for the children who have died overnight in Gaza because of the bombs that I've been unable to stop. That is what sustains us over a lifetime, is that caring. And no matter what difficulties we face, no matter how hard the struggle, no matter the conflicts we have within the movement, it's that core that unites all of us and keeps us motivated to continue even under the most difficult circumstances. We are, as many have said, we're in the most
difficult of times. I think it's a Chinese saying, right? But we're also in the best of times. And I really feel energized by being part of this discussion. Thank you all.
Thank you, Cynthia, and thank you for persevering through your tragedy. Thank you for coming. KK.
Okay, let's try this again. Hi, everybody. My comment was very early on, so I hope it's still relevant, but it was related to the first question, but there, like you said, all the questions are connected. But I wanted to say that I agree with what people have said about the connection between our fears and anxieties and honestly our anger. The connection between those emotions and our collective unity and the need for us to politically struggle together, because that's the way for us to solve these emotional problems that we're having that are in reaction to the actual things happening in society. The solution is us coming together. We need to help others see that the real working class, the way we are suffering, is very similar, that we're in the same boat compared to the billionaires. But as people said, we're in a class war right now. So the billionaires are making us think they're purposefully trying to divide us. They want us to not see our commonalities. The ruling class is working hard to emphasize our divisions based on race, gender, transgender, sexual orientation, sexual presentation, all these things that are important parts of our identity, but they are not the defining factors of how society should be organized. In the new society that's organized around our needs, all those things it will be about equality and justice for all. But those things are not the things that are, like Ethel said, they're not the things that are causing our problems or, situations with what immigrants are doing or what trans people are doing. And I wanted to say, for example, there's a lot of anger towards Trump voters, and there's a lot of anger blaming them basically, or blaming different parts of like, why did Latino men vote for them, and why did these people do? But they were very misled. We're really downplaying the role of the ruling class in their class warfare, directing the media into controlling what information they have. And so, and I find it helpful to remind people something that I learned through reading something in the rally, I think, or something from the Basic Needs Electoral Task Force, that the majority of people did not vote for Trump. The majority of Americans did not vote for Trump. They didn't vote for anybody. The majority of Americans did not vote because the options are so horrid. They understand that is our unity. We understand we do not have good choices. These people suck. Some people are confused and they're thinking that Trump is going to offer something that he's obviously not. So just helping people be aware of those things like that fact that actually the majority did not vote for Trump. They didn't vote for anybody. And then when I talk to my students when I teach them that just the basic fact that the majority of people living in poverty are white, that is shocking to them. And it really, when I talk about why would that be, whose interest is that? In whose interest is it for us to think that the majority of Black people, the majority of poor people are just Black? What are the stereotypes about Black people? It makes it seem like, oh, they just deserve, the poor people are just poor because they're Black. What's wrong with Black people? They can't get it together, etc. But no, when we understand the majority of people, it's all of us, and the majority are actually white, it can really raise awareness both of the efforts to confuse us and of our true unity. And so, yeah, emphasizing that unity. All power to the people. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. I am going to read the third question and then I'll go to our next person on stack. Are we in a class war? KK just spoke about some of these things. What does this mean concretely? And Walda?
Yeah, I'm violating my own thing that I shouldn't be speaking, because I want to hear some voices of some folks that are here. But I wanted to say something that I think cuts across the three questions and kind of the times we're living in. And it's one of my favorite quotes from Che Guevara. And it says, "Let me say, at the risk of seeming ridiculous, that the true revolutionary is guided by great feelings of love." And I really and truly believe that. I mean, Anthony talks about, whatever I used to say in class and do. But if we do not have a political home, and I mean a home in the sense of not just a politics, um, but I don't know, something's popping up on my screen. Not just a political analysis and not just an organizational reality, but what is that humanity that really keeps us going despite the fear, the division, the lies, the murder, and everything else. And I think that's one of the challenges of revolutionaries today, because we are in a class war and they are killing us, they are killing the earth, they are killing all forms of life. And if we cannot figure out how to move through the past of division, the individual sense of fear and hopelessness, and so on, then I cannot imagine how we're going to win the class war. So I just want to say that I think Cynthia spoke to it and others. I mean, being a revolutionary is a deeply emotional, right? It's a deeply emotional as well as a deeply revolutionary and a deeply political activist kind of thing. And I think it's that I'd like to hear other people's thinking about. I want to say one other thing. The question of the history of this country, of the settler colonialism, indigenous genocide, the slave trade of African peoples, white workers who were brought over either as criminals, because Georgia was a penal colony, or to do the worst work. um, we've got to listen to each other, understand our histories, and figure out how to move together, because we have a common enemy, and it's life and death. So I'm going to pass.
Okay, I'm going to continue with Stack, but I wanted to again kind of come back to the question of how do we overcome the division, right? And I did, just jot down some things from a lot of your comments. One, is having some trust in people that are in the movement, have the courage to speak out and to talk to people, right? Um, Part of community and struggle with yourself internally, try to avoid the temptation to withdraw or the self-sabotage. There's a lot of talk about how Black women in particular were just, you know, resting because of just how devastating that the political season was, and how our efforts once again were just kind of taken for granted. But to stay motivated through this struggle, help others see that we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. Having, to educate people that the people in poverty, the majority of the people are white, right? African Americans are only 14% of the population of this country. Hepzibah.
Thanks, Kimberly. I just wanted to kind of build on Kim K's and Waldo's comments that I think to say that Trump is not offering anything is, maybe I would switch that language a little bit and say Trump is actually offering a lot. He's offering deportation. He's offering the deconstruction of the government. He's offering a new narrative. He's offering division, right? And like, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm in Star Wars where it's like, you know, which force do you choose? Like the dark force or the good force? But the problem is like, we know that messages of division are a lot easier for us emotionally, psychologically, physically, materially, energetically to latch onto and to invest in. And speaking about like what it means to live in a class society that's multiracial, multinational, multigendered, and more, and understanding that we are in a unified class war requires really deep strategies and empathy and perspective taking and patience. And that is a lot harder in all of the ways. And so just to kind of go back to your question from like, what do we do and how do we move forward? I think it's really helping revolutionaries if, as Walda says, right, building on that quote, that like the foundation is love. Love builds out of empathy and perspective taking and care and thought. And so we have to, as revolutionaries, to really invest in helping people to learn those strategies so that we can bind to come together to see each other in one working class war. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jerome. Jerome, if you're
Yes, I'm trying to get off of mute. Sorry. You know, we've been in this class war for a long time. You know, it just didn't start with Trump and his folks. I mean, we have to remember that Obama was the person that deported more people than had ever been deported in the presidential term. You know, and so this war has been carried out both by Republicans and Democrats. So the question today is, why is it intensifying? Why, you know, and I think that's a very critical question, because the reason it's intensifying is because the world is fundamentally changing. You know, it started with this economic revolution, the computerization and robotization of, and now you add the intensification of the development of AI, and you'll see that the way things are produced and developed in this country is totally changing. And when that changes, like it's changing now, every institution has to revolutionize, has to change, has to come into accordance with the new way of doing things. And I say all that just to say, when we're in a transition like this, it scares the ruling class. They don't know how this transition is going to happen. What it's going to lead to. Their greatest fear is that this transition will mobilize millions and millions and millions of workers, and somehow we will unite. And so they got to try to protect against that before it even starts. And that's why they're moving toward a fascist state apparatus, you know, because liberal democracy can't handle the kind of reaction that they're projecting out of this transition that we're living through. You know, and so that's why it's intensifying. I think the real, I mean, not the real, one of the questions of how we unify is that we have to really talk to each other and struggle with each other. That this transition is not only just making people rise up and resist, it's also bringing all these critical questions to the forefront. Are we just going to fight to go back to where we were, you know, a couple of years ago? Or are we going to fight for a new society? You know, these questions are on the minds of the working class. Where are we going with this fight? What does going on the offensive really mean? You know, and so I think it's really, really critical, you know, that the fundamental core of unity is getting strategic unity. You know, how do you put forth a vision and put forth a strategy of how to obtain that vision, and put that out and have the critical discussions so that a critical mass of people can unite. I mean, that's really fundamentally the way we can help us unite, is by talking about the fight that we're fighting, the future that we're fighting for. You know, everybody don't realize how bad it is, but a whole lot of people do. You know, and so we don't have to keep telling people how bad it is. We have to begin to discuss and continue to discuss the future that we're fighting for, and the fact that we cannot go backward. You know, there's no room for going backward. And so I think that's one of the important questions about how do we lay the basis for this unity that we need, and also how do we lay the basis in our defensive struggles, you know, to go on the offensive. In order to, we must have some critical mass of people who are organized and looking in the same direction of a vision of the future. Pass.
Very good. Thank you. Steve T. You're on mute.
There it is. Okay. This is really brain food. Thank all the comments on this thing. I agree these attacks are aimed at keeping people from seeing ourselves as part of the same class. That there's a particular section under attack, and that's that. But maybe that's not just the thinking of those people, the people who are staying out of the fight. Maybe that thinking's really affected a lot of the thinking of the fighters from the previous era. Folks who are revolutionary in their heart and mind, but like what Jerome was talking about, the tactics of how to do that, that they're still working that out. We do live in a class society objectively, but we don't live in a class society politically in our thinking. People in America tend to think of whatever struggle they're connected to against a particular attack on a particular section, that reflects who they are too. I'm that. Like when you hear people talking about the white working class, what the hell is a fucking white working class? It's a working class. There's a section that's white, but it's not meant destructively. It's just part of how we internalize. Well, I'm in this fight. I've been in fight around undocumented since like 70s. And there's a lot of the thing, it's an attack against us. It's fueled especially because some of those people come from another country. So it's a very natural thing. And it wasn't so bad in a previous stage of more stable capitalism, a bit more stable, when attacks on immigrants, homeless, whoever, it didn't attract as much sympathy among the more privileged sections of our working class. That wasn't so bad. So it's kind of fought out with the more ideological fascist types and the people fighting for that section. But today there's a growing mass of once stable workers, the majority of them white, who are becoming economically insecure. And they're being urged to participate in the attack on the particular groups. And if we don't speak to them, like most activists did not in the elections, a lot did. Rosemary talked about these wonderful folks coming forward and doing it, but a lot didn't. It was very much about those people attack. I'm standing with those people. An example, we see the thousands, not just of whites who voted for Trump along the border, but Latinos who voted for Trump because they thought he offered something that dealt with their material interest in cutting down the job competition. It ain't going to do that. But you can't attack that the same way we would have attacked who was going after immigrants in a previous period. Now, there's revolutionary leaders who warned us about this. I've been reading this same quote a bunch of times. Some of you heard it before, but I know in my committee, we call it the 50 years. This is Nelson Peary, page 227 of A Black Radical. He's talking about the Depression era class motion that got stalled by World War II, stalled then afterwards through this ability of the enemy to do massive bribery. So writing from the perspective of the Watts uprising in 65, that's the part where he's just talking about, but talking about how that class motion forward of the Depression had gotten halted. The McCarthy repression and rapidly rising living standards of the organized section of the white workers isolated the revolutionaries. At the same time, the African-American freedom struggles were rising. En masse, these revolutionaries shifted from the struggle based on class to that based on color. It might take another 50 years for the economic conditions to awaken the mass of white workers. And I think we all agree with that, but awakening to the need to fight doesn't awaken you automatically to who to fight against and who to fight alongside. It's one thing to say, let's all fight against the way the ruling class is attacking that sector. It's a very different and more revolutionary within that struggle to be turning to all the other fighters we talk about and say, let's all fight against the way the ruling class is launching a class war, like the organizer of this wonderful discussion said, a class war against all of us through this or that particular class on an attack on a particular section. They sound similar, but they're not the same. One reinforces that thinking that in the previous period wouldn't kill us, but it's a thinking that facilitated these fascists getting millions of working class Americans to think these people cared more about them.
Thank you. Very good. So I am doing progressive stack, as I mentioned. So Kathy.
You're muted.
Still can't hear you, Kathy. You might have something going on your end. Okay. So yeah, can anybody hear her? I can't hear her.
Nope.
Okay. So you might need to come back in the meeting, Kathy, but I'll call on you again. Gloria and Sal.
This is Sal. It's not the pretty face, it's the one with the mustache that's talking, okay? All right. Okay. I think I wanted to follow up a little on what Jerome said, that I think it's becoming very clear now to people that it's about where the problem is. I think when you have billionaires and a mass of people that are getting attacked, I mean, unionized workers, students, it's so broad, and I mean, including immigrants. I think it's becoming a lot easier to explain, because I think we have to remind people that Biden attacked the UCLA students, and Trump just built on that. So I think deporting students that protested about the destruction in Gaza. Well, the thing is, they're spreading it around. Like you see these people in the prisons in El Salvador. The thing is, it's almost like the slave ships. You have masses of people that are just treated like they're worthless. But I think it's important to get to the fundamentals, and that's that we live in a period of abundance, and there used to be an understanding that if kind of like the social contract that you if you do your part, you'll be taken care of. That's no longer true. So I think that's what's new. They're deciding that it's more important for them to build spaceships that can go to Mars to take care of Musk when they destroy the Earth than to really save the Earth and humanity. So I want to get back to fundamentals. I think a lot of it is just explaining stuff. Is my favorite quote from Thomas Paine is, "All the world is my country, all mankind are my brethren, and to do good is my religion." Okay, he spoke this at the beginning of the American Revolution, and this sparked, this was the first revolution for democracy in the world. It sparked the revolution in Haiti, where they actually overthrew slavery, and they're being penalized for what they did even back then. And it sparked all these revolutions in Latin America. I mean, it was an inspiration to the rest of the world what happened there. And here Trump is coming at trying to eliminate this. So I think we have to do a lot of explaining, because everybody fits into this picture. I mean, you can tie in African Americans, you can tie in whites, you can tie in immigrants from all over the world into this view that now it's possible to have the kind of world he was envisioning 250 years ago. Now, if we just get people clear about what the source of the problem is. I'll stop.
Okay, we are getting very close to the end. I'll take the people that are still on stack, and then we're going to wrap up. It's been a very good conversation today. Miss Rita.
Oh, thank you, Kim. Thank you, everybody. It's lovely. It's wonderful to see everybody. I just want to say three short things, hopefully three short things. One is, this question again of class. What is class, right? I mean, it really is a relationship to ownership, right? It's not a question of income. And having, and seeing these new forces getting in motion as society is in this state of disruption around how we can go forward, I think that's an important thing for people to be able to see themselves as part of the same class, just as we understand that undocumented folks are often at the core of our working class, right? So I think that question of what is class is also part of what's on our agenda. And the second thing I wanted to say is about, I think other people have talked about this. I know my brother Sal just talked about it, but it's really this question of revolutionary joy. I mean, as we see, this destruction of a society, this acute erosion of a society that's been under collapse for a long, long time, we also have to be able to see the opportunity that we have now that we've never really had before in human history, right? That opportunity based on, it's not a question of scarcity, it's a question of the distribution of abundance and the possibility that has to be rooted in our mutual love for each other. And then the third thing is this question of vision. We all have these opportunities, right? Just talking to folks, right? What is it you'd really like to see in this society? How do we actually every day, in fact, collaborate, coordinate, and work with each other in society so that we can, not only thrive, not only, survive, but also thrive. And I think it's that possibility that has also come in direct connection with the necessity that's driving this process forward. And I think it's a very exciting time if we engage in that revolutionary joy and the revolutionary love that Walda talked about earlier too. That's it.
Very good. Thank you, Rita. Kathy, you want to try again? Yeah. Still can't hear you? Okay, Peter.
Yeah, I'll try and hold mine under 2 minutes. Taking off from what Jerome said earlier about how the necessity and possibility of building class unity. Months ago, I heard a white man in Kentucky standing in front of a city council, and as part of his attack on what they were doing, he not only admitted but owned the fact that his great 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 grandparents owned slaves, and that he knew he had slavery in the family. And I have tried this out, and it's amazing because I know for a fact that my fifth great grandfather in Missouri had 27 slaves. And when I bring that out in a discussion, it fundamentally changes the discussion. It's not about guilt. I'm not guilty of what my grandfather did, but I'm guilty if I don't do something about it now. And when I've raised this, I mean, I don't stand up and yell it, but in the course of a conversation, when I say, well, I know for a fact that my fifth great grandfather had 27 slaves and his daughter had 4 slaves, it's like something falls away. The guardedness falls away, and people feel free to discuss this as a problem we all have. because white supremacy screwed up white workers really bad. It trained us to accept much less than freedom just because we could look and see that somebody else had it worse than us. And it's such bullshit. So I just wanted to advance that. It's a powerful tool when we own our history and own it free of worrying about whether it implicates you or me in what happened before. And that's part of building unity. The other part of building unity is around the actual things we need to accomplish. There's so much healing. We have to heal the oceans, the land, the sky, the earth. We need to heal ourselves and heal each other. That unites us. That process unites us. And when we detail all the things we need to do, it becomes so clear to even lifetime Democrats I know. They say, oh, capitalism can't do this. We can't live with this. It's a fundamental change. And I'll stop there.
Okay. Okay, so my last two, Yolanda, if you have a brief comment.
Yeah, I think what Steve Teixeira was talking about, my name is Rhonda Catalco, is that we talked about this in Chicago. When I was in San Diego, the FBI looked me up, so they sent me to Chicago to work with the People's Tribune. And I had the opportunity to listen to our conversations. And one of them about the carrot or the stick, that's what we had before, the carrot, the bribe, now we have the stick. And so what I wanted to say, this is particularly true in the way the Constitution is being used to defend Trump. I just read Project Esther given emailed to me by, if not now, it used to be not in our names, they're Jewish people. And you can look it up. It's called Project Esther, and they want to make it illegal to raise funds for Hamas, for Palestine, to distribute literature, which I always do at these events, to protest against what's happening in Gaza. So, and this has been going on, the censoring. I remember when Biden was president, they passed a law in Washington, D.C., in the Congress and the Senate, the red flag laws, where U.S. citizens have a gun, they can put you in a mental institution because of the red flag laws. You could be a danger to yourselves or to others. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm registered in the Green Party. Both the Democrats and the Republicans have been using bribe, they use sticks, and they're going to continue using it. And I really like when they said, we got to talk, you guys, somebody said, we got to talk to the people. We got to and I do talk to the people, and we got to let them know that it is a class, and what a class is. It's not having a lot of money, it's not being the manager, it's the ownership of private property, of exploitation and oppression. And we're not part of that class. And I think a lot of people, I think of a general strike. And I don't know how many workers will be willing to not go on a general strike and not have food for their families. They have to have committees, relationships with the farmers to get food and essentials to people.
Thank you. Okay, so Kathy Powers.
Thank you so much. I didn't think I'd get in. I just got off the bus and I'm home now. It occurs to me that first of all, what I consider what class is who has the power and who doesn't. So that, that's pretty much easy. It also occurs to me that I'm a crazy white lady. And I need to realize that I look through everything through a white lens because that's all I know. However, I would really, really like to reach out to people of color. I want to know what they want. What do they want? What do they see? We need to, talk to each other more. And mostly what occurs to me is that they've got us so busy trying to, keep what we need and everything that we don't have any time to build. We don't have any time to build. And we need a vision because we're just fighting. We're just fighting. We're at war and we're just fighting. What do we want? That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so our final speaker will be Kathleen. Go ahead and wrap it up for us.
Oh, thank you. Oh, yeah. Anyway, I don't know if you can hear me, but she's not going to go back. It's going to have to be something new, and it's going to have to be something in the future that speaks to her. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, well, we heard part of that. Thank you. Okay, so we're a little over time, but thank you everyone. Wonderful. I wanted to remind everyone that this discussion, this conversation that we're having is part of a series, and we have the next one that is scheduled for June 7th. Also, we want to, you guys evaluate this, give us feedback. So the evaluation will be dropped in the chat. It will be a link for people to complete it and get back to us. Also, there will also be a link dropped in the chat for, we do have a program workbook for the league program. If anyone is interested in doing a deeper dive with us on the program, leave your email address so we can contact you. Would be great. Or if you want information on how to use it also. Okay, so I encourage everyone to join us again. I encourage everyone to do the evaluation because that information is important to us. We'll be doing this again June 7th. Thank you, everyone. Wonderful.
Thank you, Kimberly. Great facilitation. Thank you.
Yes, excellent
Everybody.
facilitation.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good to see everybody. Stay.